A weird trend is starting to develop in the Fran Brown era, plus why Dan Villari's hot start may be for real.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. We are always free and available wherever you get your podcasts, whether you're watching Locked On Syracuse right now on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite audio platform. On today's show, big picture takeaways following Syracuse's 27-20 overtime victory over the UConn Huskies on Saturday. The Orange are 1-1 heading into Friday night's battle against Colgate. On today's show, we're going to size up Syracuse relative to the ACC. We're also going to discuss Dan Villari's hot start to the year and why I think it's for real. Comment your thoughts right now in the comment section below if you agree with me. Dan Villari is poised to have a big season for Syracuse, and I'm saying that after 2 weeks. But first, how Syracuse football in the Fran Brown era. They play up to their competition, and they also play down to their competition. All that and more here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. Now, before we get to everything, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So I don't know about you. Feel free to comment in the comments section below right now. But I'm starting to notice a pattern so far in the Fran Brown era. Fran Brown's first game as Syracuse football head coach came in late August of 2024. He has now coached Syracuse football for 15 games, including last year and this year. So what's the trend, you may ask? Well, I've already said it a couple of times. They seem to play up to their competition, but they also seem to play down to their competition. Now, maybe that sounds a bit extreme at first, and I understand that because usually that's said in a negative connotation. Oh, you play up to your competition, but you also play down to your competition. It's weird, but their games never really seem to involve too many blowouts here. Since Fran Brown has taken over, Syracuse football has played in 15 games. They are 11-4. Now, I think we would all take that record if I told you when Fran Brown was hired in late 2023 that Syracuse in his first 15 games would be 11-4. That's great. A lot of those games have been decided by one score. In fact, 10 of those 15 games have been decided by one score. And Syracuse, to their credit, this is why I'm not really complaining all that much. They are 8-2 in one-score games in the Fran Brown era. They are also 3-0 in overtime, by the way. But let's go through these one-score games and why I'm starting to notice that it doesn't really seem to matter the opponent. Syracuse football seems to always find itself in a tight game. We're going to go back to last year. So in order, Georgia Tech, that was a ranked team coming into the Dome. It was week 2. They ended up going 7-5, but I think they were the best 7-5 in the 7-5 team in the country last year. They were ranked at the time. That was a one-score victory for Syracuse. Then you had Stanford the following week. That was a non-bowl team, and that was a loss. UNLV on the road. That team was ranked. That team was one game away from the college football playoff. That was an overtime win for Syracuse. NC State, 6-6 bowl team. Virginia Tech, 6-6 bowl team, overtime victory. And Virginia Tech had a lot of injuries in that game as well. So they were beat up, and Syracuse barely beat Virginia Tech. In fact, we'll talk about that in just a moment, how that was a big comeback victory for Syracuse. Boston College, 6-6 bowl team on the road. That was a loss for the Orange. Cal was a 6-6 bowl team on the road. That was a win for Syracuse football. You had UConn the first time at home. That was a one-score win. Then you had Miami, who at the time was ranked 6th in the country, on the verge of an ACC championship appearance, on the verge of the college football playoff. And we all know how that ended nicely for Syracuse football. They fall behind 21-0 and they come back to win that game. Then you had UConn again in week 2. This is why I'm actually bringing this up, because UConn again, overtime victory. All of those games that I just mentioned, whether it was a win for Syracuse, whether it was a loss for Syracuse, again, they were 8-2 in the games that I just mentioned. It didn't really seem to matter the opponent that Syracuse was playing. It could be a team like Miami or UNLV on the road that was on the verge of making the college football playoff. It could also be one of the worst power conference teams a season ago. I'm talking about Stanford, and Syracuse lost to Stanford. So now relating it back to 2025, since most of that has to do with 2024, and this is a brand new team technically, I think we can all agree that Syracuse football, take the result out of it, they played a lot better against Tennessee in week 1, a greater opponent, than they did in week 2 against UConn, a lesser opponent. Yes, Syracuse won the game against UConn and they lost to Tennessee. But again, comment your thoughts in the comments section below. I think we're all kind of on the same page here that Syracuse played better against Tennessee than they did against UConn. So this is what I mean when I say, since Fran Brown has taken over, Syracuse football has always seemed to be able to maybe punch above its weight or punch at its weight class, but they also seem to play down to their competition as well. And maybe I'm being too harsh. Comment your thoughts in the comment section below. Maybe I'm just too harsh on Syracuse football. But at times, to me, it seems like Syracuse football, even during games, we're about to get to that in just a moment, they seem to have this on-off switch. So let's get to it. There were some comebacks mixed in there. UNLV was a game-tying drive in the fourth quarter. You had Virginia Tech, which was an 18-point third quarter comeback. Miami was a 21-point second quarter comeback. And you had UConn last week, where Syracuse was down 11 with less than 6 minutes remaining in the game. They scored 3 consecutive touchdowns, including overtime, and they obviously beat the UConn Huskies. And they also have moments over the course of those one-score games where they've nearly blown it. Georgia Tech in week 2 of last year, Syracuse, if you recall, was up 31-14 in the fourth quarter after an Oronde Gadsden touchdown. It was on a post route. It was beautiful. Everyone was going crazy. And Syracuse had to hang on for dear life for a 3-point win in that one. NC State, they were up 24-7 in the fourth quarter. They held on to win 24-17. I believe they recovered an onside kick. And you could say the same thing about UConn the first time around, how that was a one-score victory after a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter. And also Cal on the road last year was a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter that they ended up only winning by 1 score. I believe in all those contests, they had to recover an onside kick to seal the victory. So what's the conclusion from all of this? Should we rip Syracuse over it? I think the logical take is this. In the Fran Brown era, which is 15 games now, I don't know if we have seen Syracuse football from start to finish play a complete game. They're never going to play a perfect game. That's just, it's not going to happen. But they have never played a complete game where they go wire to wire from the start to the finish. And not only do you never feel like they're going to lose, because look, I mean, over the course of last year and at times this year, you don't feel like necessarily they're going to lose. But not only that they're not going to lose, but that they're also playing well. And they're not letting their opponent stay in the game. But to their credit, they seem to have that switch. And more often than not in the Fran Brown era, they end up turning it on when it matters most. So is it a big deal Is it cause for concern? Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. But again, to their credit, they are 11-4 since Fran Brown has taken over, and they are 8-2 in one-store games. It's just weird to me that they could play Miami really good at home and they can come back from 21 points down, but then they're playing a lesser Virginia Tech team, and they also need to come back from 3 scores to win that one in the second half. Now, coming up, instead of talking about up and down a competition, we'll talk about one player who is seeing his stock rise after the first couple of weeks. Of course, I'm talking about tight end Dan Villari. We'll talk about why his breakout is no fluke. Stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process so much smoother. Join the Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices just miraculously jumping at the checkout for some reason. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you're going to pay. Honestly, Game Time is faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. And folks, I think we have our veteran offensive player breakout for the 2025 season. Last year, the unexpected breakout on offense that happened to be a veteran was Trevor Pena. This year, it appears to be tight end Dan Villari. Dan Villari is off to a hot start through 2 weeks this year, and I think he could be in line for an All-ACC campaign, whether it's first team, second team, third team, honorable mention. I think when all is said and done, Dan Villari is going to be on one of those teams. So through 2 games, here are his numbers. He's got 12 catches for 159 yards. Both lead Syracuse football. Think about all the weapons that Syracuse football has. Think about all of them that we have discussed on this podcast. Your leader in catches, your leader in receiving yards through 2 weeks is none other than tight end Dan Villari. He also has 16 targets through 2 games. That is second on the team, only behind wide receiver Justice Ross Simmons. His previous career highs, of course, I'm still referring to Dan Villari, all came in the 2023 season. These are just the receiving numbers. 20 catches, 180 yards. So Dan Villari, knock on wood, he is going to obliterate 180 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. Also in 2023, he had more rushing yards than he had receiving yards, and he had nearly identical the amount of passing yards compared to receiving yards. Dan Villari in 2023, he was used mostly as a Swiss Army knife. If you recall, he actually won running back of the week, I believe, in the Pitt game late in the season. 2023 was a weird year for Syracuse football, but Dan Villari was one of the bright spots of that team. Now, Dan Villari has become not really a Swiss Army knife per se, because he could still do a lot of things, and they have him doing a lot of things, but really he has become a focal point of this offense at tight end. Why the breakout could be real for Dan Villari. Why he could shatter all of his previous receiving career highs. And before we get to it, do you agree with me or do you disagree with me? Comment your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think Dan Villari is an all-ACC tight end in 2025? Because I didn't think I'd be saying that through 2 weeks, but I definitely think it's possible for a guy like him. Number one, he's actually being used like a real tight end for this team. And what do I mean by that? It appears like Syracuse football has finally taken the training wheels off Dan Villari. They're no longer telling him, hey, go play quarterback, go play running back, or like last year for Syracuse, where he was primarily just a blocking tight end, which wasn't really a problem because you still had Oronde Gadsden at tight end, and you had plenty of other weapons to choose from. So they didn't really need Dan Villari's pass catching ability. He was used as a blocking tight end last year. It's as if, with Oronde Gadsden leaving, Syracuse football threw Dan Villari in the deep end of the pool and said, you're going to be the starting tight end of this team, and you're going to do a good job at it. They have him actually running routes this year. They have him reading defenses this year. He's finding oftentimes himself wide open because he knows where the soft spot in the defense is. And yes, he is still used as a blocker. And yes, occasionally he will be used under center for a quarterback sneak trick play as well. But for the most part, he's being used like an actual tight end. They're also calling design screenplays for him where he leaks out in the flat and finds himself with a bunch of space. The training wheels are off of Dan Villari. They're using him like an actual tight end in 2025, not the Swiss Army knife in 2023, not the blocker he was in 2024, someone who can do the blocking and the receiving like a normal tight end should, right? And number two of why this breakout, I believe, is real. Syracuse football under Jeff Nixon, the offensive coordinator, they still love to throw the football. They are still a pass-first team. This means the counting stats are going to be there for Dan Villari. I mentioned how Dan Villari has 16 targets through the first 2 games, and that sounds like a really high number because it is a really high number. But in reality, it's not as much as you think because Syracuse football through 2 games, or at least just looking at Steve Angeli's numbers, 94 passing attempts, meaning Dan Villari's target share is only 17%, which is not super high. It's not super low either, but a 17% target share in a normal, balanced offense is not all that much. You're not going to accumulate that many stats or that high of stats with just a 17% target share. But we know Jeff Nixon, he loves to throw the football, and oftentimes he wants to spread the ball around. You'll see 7-8 guys in one game catch a pass for Syracuse football. It's why when Syracuse throws the ball so many times where oftentimes there are stretches in games where you're like, where's that player? Where's this player? This guy seems invisible. And then you look at the stat sheet and you say, wait, that guy had 6 catches for 70 yards? That happens because Syracuse football throws the ball a lot and they distribute it to many different players. So even if a guy like Dan Villari isn't getting a massive target share because they throw the ball so much, he's still going to be able to accumulate stats. I don't know where his numbers are ultimately going to end up because as of right now, if we just take the regular season, he's got, I'm doing the live math for you right now. He's got 159 yards through 2 games. You divide that by 2. That's 79.5 receiving yards per game. We'll just do a 12-game season for now. We'll exclude postseason play. That would be 954 receiving yards. Do I think Dan Villari is going to have nearly 1,000 receiving yards this year? Probably not. But could he get to 700? Maybe 800? I think so. Dan Villari's start to this year is not a fluke. Comment your thoughts in the comment section below. So those are your big picture takeaways. How Syracuse football plays up and down to its competition. Dan Villari's breakout appears to be real. Now coming up, how Syracuse stacks up relative to the ACC. Stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. Syracuse's next game is on Friday night against Colgate. Now, I don't want to jinx it, okay? But Colgate is an FCS opponent. I'm 99.99% confident that Syracuse football will walk away with a W after Friday night's game. And for more context behind that, Syracuse football has never lost to an FCS opponent. So in all likelihood, the Orange, after 3 weeks of this season, will be sitting at a nice record of 2-1. But their final 9 games will not be easy. 8 of those games are going to be against ACC opponents. That's to be expected. 8-game conference schedule. What's the 9th game? Out of conference? Sure. Independent? Yes. At Notre Dame. Oh boy, that's not going to be easy for Syracuse football. But as we have talked about following the UConn game, I think when you look at the rest of the ACC, making a bowl for Syracuse football is still a very realistic expectation. Now, had they lost to UConn, doesn't matter how they played, you could separate the two. Had they lost to UConn, I'd be sitting here saying, guys, I don't think Syracuse football is making a bowl. You can't beat UConn at home. You look that bad against UConn at home. No disrespect to UConn, but you're not a bowl team. Having said that, they did beat UConn, which is the positive. And now you look at the rest of the schedule, and let's be honest about the ACC so far. Is it really all that good? I don't know. I don't know if it's really all that good so far this year. I think there are a few really good teams in the ACC, one of which Syracuse is not going to play this year, which I can't believe I'm saying, is Florida State. I am glad that Florida State is not on Syracuse's schedule in 2025. That team, I said it on last week's ACC squad, after I saw them demolish Alabama, I think that team might make the college football playoff. And I can't believe I'm saying that. But regardless, let's talk about Syracuse's schedule for a moment. Just go down the line. You got Colgate on Friday night. That's a win. So you're 2-1. At Clemson. This game is going to be tough at Clemson. I don't want to sit here and underestimate the Clemson Tigers. Having said that, through 2 games, doesn't matter if their opponent is LSU, their opponent could be Troy. Their offense has looked pretty shaky through 2 games. We'll see how they look in week 3, and we'll see how they do against Syracuse in week 4. But their offense has been shaky, to say the least. Is it impossible that Syracuse can go into Clemson and win? I don't think it's as daunting as I think many of us thought heading into the year. Still going to be tough, though, against the Clemson Tigers. Then you got Duke at home, who have not exactly been world beaters. I've been pretty disappointed with Duke through 2 games this year. They did not look good in their first game. In their second game against Illinois at home, that was a big one for Duke to kind of say, hey, we're going to have a really good year. Illinois is a good team, but we're at home and we're going to beat them. That did not exactly happen to Duke. So Duke, I do think, is a pretty good opponent for Syracuse football. Definitely think that's a coin flip game, but it's a coin flip game and you're at home. Find a way to win that one. At SMU, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but they just blew a 14-point fourth quarter lead against Baylor and lost. See, this is why I am not in the business of throwing away victories, even if the team does not perform. Could you imagine had Syracuse actually lost to UConn? Well, think about it this way. SMU just lost to Baylor. Now, is it the end of the world? No. But if SMU this year finishes 9-3, they don't get to play in the ACC title game because they lose 2 conference games, and 9-3 for them will not be good enough to make the college football playoff. They're going to be kicking themselves because they lost that game to Baylor. So it could be bad. Take the win when you can get it. Pitt at home. Now, Pitt, never easy for Syracuse football. They seem to always lose to the Pitt Panthers. And Pitt, though, they're 2-0, which is good. But they haven't played anyone. So I'm not going to sit here and judge Pitt yet. They've played nobody through 2 games. At Georgia Tech, I'll be honest, it's a bad matchup for Syracuse football and their rushing attack. I call them Tennessee light. That's on the road. That's not going to be easy. North Carolina at home after that, we'll see, but they are not off to a good start, the Tar Heels. At Miami, unless Miami folds, that's probably a loss. Then you got at Notre Dame after a bye. Unless Notre Dame has a stinker, that's probably a loss. And then you have Boston College to round out the regular season at home, which is beatable. So the schedule, now you look at it, does it look as daunting as we thought heading into 2025? Probably not. If we're being honest. It's not like the ACC has performed amazing to start the year. So am I going to sit here and say, oh, well, if you look at their schedule, Syracuse is bound to win 9 games again? No. That's not what I'm saying. I think Syracuse football, though, making a bowl is still a requirement for this team to be a successful season. It's not just an expectation. Successful year, after Colgate, find a way to win 4 more games. Do you think that Syracuse football through 2 games has shown you that they can be a bowl team in 2025? Comment your thoughts in the comment section below. As far as what's coming up on Locked On Syracuse here in the near future, tomorrow there will be another full podcast. The things that we all want to see Syracuse do against Colgate. Comment your thoughts right now in the comment section below what you want to see from Syracuse against Colgate on Friday night. So that's what's coming up on Locked On Syracuse here in the near future. It's another big moment here on the Locked On Podcast Network. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside 2-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse. I'll see you all again soon.